Chapter 11. Adam walked beside his wife, tucking her hand in his arm as they descended from the Stevenson private jet and walked to the waiting car. They had flown to Barbados for a business dinner with Houston-born tech guru Bobby Michael. Bobby's massive private estate was along the waterfront and quite beautiful. It wasn't long before their driver stopped the car in front of the mansion. It was near where many large yachts were docked. "Thanks for coming today," Adam whispered and held out his arm as they got out of the car. Elle's green eyes glowed in the shimmer of lights that surrounded the pier. Ruby red earrings swayed from her delicate ears, their twinkling shine reflecting in her eyes. "I'm happy to be with you, Adam, although I must admit to feeling intimidated and a little out of my element tonight," Elle whispered in his ear. "There's no need to feel uncomfortable. Just be yourself." Adam put his hand on the small of her back as they made their way up to the double front steps. As Elle walked beside him, Adam admired her beauty. Her long blonde hair was done up in a French twist that revealed her slender neck. The red dress she wore swept down to her tiny waist and floated gracefully around her legs as she walked. His wife was a combination of compassion, intelligence, and beauty. In his business circles, she was a rare gem. He really didn't expect Elle to come to all his business functions. She was busy enough without adding another item to her list. Tonight, he was grateful to have his beautiful wife by his side. Tonight, he needed to be focused. Tonight, he needed to concentrate on being the devoted husband and honest businessman that he was. As soon as they stepped into the house, their host met them. "Adam Stevenson, it's good of you to join us tonight." Bobby Michael shook his hand. "It's good to be here, Bobby." Adam returned the gesture. "And this must be your lovely wife." "Yes, this is my wife, Elle." His wife's cheeks flushed a lovely pink as the man bowed slightly over her hand. "Please, come inside." Bobby led them to a large sitting area with soft white sofas gracing three sides of the massive room. Drink tables were set out on either side of the large space. At the far end of the room, behind a glass wall, was a glass fireplace. Beside it was a large mahogany table that seated at least 20 people. Large windows lined the wall on either side, filling the room with light and making the space even larger. Many men and women that he'd come to meet were scattered around the room, sitting and talking. "Welcome. Please let one of my servers prepare your favorite drink and make yourself at home." Bobby waved one of the waiters over to them. As Bobby welcomed other guests, Adam and Elle took a moment for themselves. A crease formed between Adam's brows as his gaze swept the room. He would need to focus and somehow manage to talk to one or two people who would be good connections for his business. "I see you worrying." Elle squeezed his hand, getting his attention. His wife whispered as they walked into the room. Adam stood motionless for a moment, his eyes roaming over the crowd of business people in the room. The large space was crowded, the waiters busy going back and forth with their trays. "I am thinking about who I should talk to first. I'm looking for someone who can help expand our new software into larger markets." Adam glanced at the man with silver streaks in his black hair. He wore a navy suit with a red tie. "Over there is Andreas Christakos. He has a lot of connections in the European markets." Adam then nodded at an Asian man whose hands were busy moving up and down as he talked with another conservatively dressed man. "Over there is Neon Zen, who is an important connection to the Asian markets. I think I'll talk to him first." He was surrounded by 3 men and women talking animatedly about something. "I'm going to go chat with some of them. Wander around and enjoy yourself, Elle." "I'll do my best." Elle's gaze shifted to the other people in the room. From the uncertain look in her eyes and how she squirmed beside him, he could tell being here tonight was very uncomfortable for her. "You are beautiful," Adam whispered in her ear. Her gaze met his, uncertainty clouding her expression. "And you're going to be fine." He took her hand and moved his thumb in small circles across the delicate skin of her wrist. "Relax." "Thank you, Adam." Elle sighed, relief evident in her eyes. He lifted her hand and brushed a soft kiss against her knuckles. "I'll be here whenever you need me." The corners of her mouth turned up into a dreamy smile, while a sprinkle of pink blossomed in her cheeks. Adam drew in a shaky breath. If this meeting wasn't so important, if he hadn't promised his brothers, he'd take his wife somewhere private and explore the sweet shape of her mouth for hours. But tonight he had a job to do. I'm going to go and talk to 𝙤𝙤𝙤𝙤. Wish me luck. Adam squeezed her hand and walked toward the man from China who now stood alone. He was going to make the most of this opportunity. He hoped Elle would be able to relax enough to enjoy the evening. Elle watched Adam walk away from her and immediately missed his company. She clung to his encouraging words, but insecurity still taunted her. Looking out over the crowded room caused another wave of self-doubt to roll over her. The large room was filled with men and women who were dressed to impress. They talked easily with one another. This world of glitz and glamour was familiar to Adam but felt awkward and uncomfortable to her. Yet this was part of what she'd agreed to when they made their marriage pact. She needed to hold up her end of the agreement. You can do this, Elle. You can make small talk with strangers. You can get to know some of these people who are important to Adam. The voice in her head gave her a new determination. She pulled her shoulders back and walked toward the drink table. Picking up a lemon water, she walked toward the group of people who had gathered around Andreas Christakos. The Greek businessman was talking about the latest trends in the European markets. As Elle listened, she took note of Andreas's interests in case she had a chance to talk to him later. Soon, the group went their separate ways. Elle had a moment alone to talk with Andreas. He was easy to talk with and seemed interested in Adam's security software. Before long, Elle turned her attention to search for the tech guru from Texas. Spotting him over by the art pieces at the other end of the large room, she squared her shoulders and walked towards him. Meandering her way through the crowd of people, she reached the alcove where many incredible paintings hung on the wall. Her gaze lingered on each painting one by one, taking small sips of her drink as she appreciated the artwork. Staring at the Picasso painting of a boy leading his horse, she admired the detail of light and shadows. You must be an admirer of beautiful art, a deep voice whispered in her ear. She glanced up to see Bobby Michael looking over at her, a playful light in his brown eyes. His imposing height and the high-quality business suit he wore gave him a commanding presence, but his voice was light-hearted. Elle inhaled a deep breath and blew it out slowly, relaxing her hands at her sides. Yes, I love art, especially art that features horses or children. The two just seem to fit together. Elle looked up at the tall man beside her, whose dark eyes gazed down at her with a mischievous twinkle. What is it about horses or children that you find so captivating? With horses, that's easy. Elle stepped a little closer to the painting. You can see the horse's shoulders and flank outlined in detail by the way the artist played with light and shadows. I think it illustrates the power and strength of the horse. And with children? With children, it's their innocence and passion for life that draws me. Elle looked at the painting again, thinking about the children who came every week to the ranch for the horse therapy program. Children are amazing in their ability to heal from painful wounds, to forgive and rebound from the past. I think this painting showcases a little of that. So much insight and passion from one so young. You appreciate the artist's attention to detail, then? Bobby leaned into the painting to get a closer look at the details. I do. Well, I can appreciate that. For instance, in this painting, I see how the light shines between the boy and his horse, and it reminds me of the light in your beautiful green eyes, shining with a secret delight. Bobby Michael's eyes gleamed and a smile dangled at the corner of his lips. Thank you. Elle's cheeks flushed, unsure of how to respond. She searched the room for her husband before turning back to Bobby. Are you and Adam newly married? His mouth quirked up at the corners. Yes. Would you tell me again about Adam's business interests? I'd be happy to explain what I know, Elle began. Adam created a new security software which has received great reviews from tech companies in the Silicon Valley. In fact, I think you would appreciate what he has created, Bobby. From what I understand, you have interests in the software industry. I do. He didn't go on. Elle made a mental note to nudge Adam to do a little more digging into Bobby's interests, so Adam could get to know him and come to a mutual understanding. I haven't had the pleasure of getting to know your husband. You will soon, I'm sure. Perhaps. Mr. Michael's dark brown eyes once again fastened on hers, and he gave her a winsome smile. But, Mrs. Stevenson, I hope we can be friends. Yes, I'd like that very much. I'm glad. He held out his arm. Why don't you tell me a little more about your passion for horses as I escort you back to the dinner table? Elle slipped her hand into the crook of his arm and walked with him out of the alcove. That might take a longer walk. The short version is, I've had a passion for horses since I was a little girl. I love to ride horses and enjoy watching them race. Since my husband bought me a racehorse a few weeks ago, I'm excited to see him run. Ah, horse racing. That does sound exciting. It is. Horse racing is the best kind of fun. Al looked up at Bobby and they shared a smile as they neared the dinner table. Many people had already sat down. She spotted Adam already seated at the dinner table waiting for her. Her husband's gaze was cool and distant. Mr. Michaels led her to Adam and pulled out the chair next to him. It's time for us to sit down for dinner. I hope you both enjoy the meal. Bobby walked toward the head of the dinner table and sat down. Dinner was filled with small talk, but Elle was anxious for it to be over. Her stomach had clenched tight throughout dinner because of the chilly response from her husband. She breathed a sigh of relief when the meal was finished and many people stood up to walk around. Adam stood to his feet and held his arm out for her. Seeing their host, they made their way toward him, and Elle said, Mr. Michaels, thank you for a lovely evening. Of course, it was my pleasure. Mr. Michaels turned to Adam. Before you go, I wanted to tell you I heard high praise tonight about the security software you've created. Perhaps we could schedule a time to meet and you could tell me more about it. Adam pulled out his business card. That would be good. You can find my contact information on my website here. Adam seemed to be doing his best to keep things professional, even though she could hear his cool tone of voice. Thanks again. I'll be in touch. Adam nodded. At that moment, an idea sprouted and Al thought it might help Adam. Just so you know, we're having our first horse race on the new track at the ranch in a few weeks. Would you care to join us, Bobby? Yes, that would be wonderful. Thank you for the invitation, Al. I'll let you know the date of the event. Al sent him a warm smile. That would be good. I look forward to it. Adam walked towards the door, Al by his side. He helped her with her jacket. Then they hurried outside to their waiting car. Not much was said between them until they were finally settled in the plane, ready for the flight home. Finally, Al needed a conversation between them. Adam, you seem cold and distant. Is something wrong? Adam sighed. I'm frustrated with myself that I asked you to get to know people tonight, especially the businessmen. It was rather annoying to watch. Al folded her arms in front of her, uncertain what she could say to that. Adam loosened his tie and pulled it off. He grunted. And I wish you wouldn't have invited Mr. Michaels to the horse racing event. I don't want him showing up at the ranch. Elle sighed. Confusion flooded her about her new husband. I invited him because I thought it would be good for your business. Tears pricked the back of her eyes, wondering how this evening had gone south so fast. How do you think it would be good for business? Adam's forehead crinkled like it did when he doubted something. Because I just know, Al shrugged. Just like I have an instinct about when a horse is ready for the next step in the training process, I have a similar instinct about people. If you would simply have a friendly conversation with Bobby Michaels, he would come around and give you what you want. Maybe. Adam's cool gaze met hers, making her wonder if he would ever see reason. She waited for him to say something else, but he was silent, continuing to be distant. It looked like this conversation would need to wait. "Since you don't seem to feel like talking tonight, I'll say good night," Elle whispered and walked toward the bedroom at the back of the plane. Lying on the bed wide awake, she was fairly certain a peaceful sleep would be hard won this night. Adam sat on the comfortable leather chair on the plane, his fingers shaky as they combed through his hair. As he thought about the evening, the truth hit him hard. He was jealous, through and through. He'd been in the wrong and needed to fix things with his wife. Adam realized he would need to apologize in the morning. Adam's fingers shook slightly as he picked up his laptop and put it on the table. Standing to his feet, he poured himself a cup of coffee from the sidebar and sat down. Positioning his laptop in front of him, he decided to work, fairly certain he wouldn't sleep much this night.